There we are. All right, so welcome everyone. Randy, I don't know if you want to give an intro in terms of the workshops coming up today even, and then October.
Yes, absolutely. So once again, welcome everybody. And so this morning we are in the Canvas Groups workshop, headed up by Monique, pardon me, headed up by Monica. And
It's going around allergies.
my apologies. But we do have, so this will go until 10 o'clock thereabouts. And then we have a 2-hour break. So basically lunch and emails. And then we have 2 more this afternoon. First one this afternoon is going to be Brandon with Canva. And so we definitely encourage everybody to come check all of that out. There's some really cool things to do with Canva versus Canvas. And then later on this afternoon, Monica, you have your second session for today. And if you could remind me which one that was.
That's on tips and tricks.
Tips and tricks, that's the one.
Canvas.
Right, so that'll be another one,
Yes.
even a good one to build off of from today.
Yes.
And then as we go through, we certainly encourage everybody to sign up for the DEPD shell, the Canvas shell, so you can get access to all of this. As Monica is going through, I'm going to drop those links in the chat so you can double check and click on that as we go through. But since we had some technical difficulties earlier, I will stop talking and I'll defer over to Monica so we can get started this morning.
Thank you so much, Randy. No, it's wonderful to see you all on a Friday morning. And Christina, the question that you asked is so important in terms of the difference between using Pronto and then using Canvas discussions or peer reviews or groups. So those kind of all together. The simple answer is that Pronto is not linked to the gradebook. So that we have 4 ways that we need to have contact with students and they with us and with each other. One of them is that we need to let students know how we will be reaching out to them. So it's teacher to students. And most of the time we let them know somewhere. I'm going to send out a weekly announcement. I'm going to use the inbox to reach out to you in case I notice something that might help you. I'm going to message you if I notice that you are a little late with an assignment, or maybe we should meet one-on-one. So that's one way. Another way we have that sort of communication is that we let students know, this is how you can reach out to me. Come to my virtual office hours. If you have physical office hours now, you might say, come to my physical office. You can also say, I will use the Canvas inbox to contact me. I will reply within 24 hours, if not sooner. During the weekend, it might be a little bit longer, 48 hours, but hang in there, so positive sort of communication to make sure that students know the whole time that we're eager and wanting to get that communication from them and where they can do that. The second 2 are going to be student to student type of communication and interaction. So what they call regular substantive interaction. And that acronym changes. So regular and effective communication, it changes a little bit, but in essence, it means the same thing. It means that throughout the semester, students should be able to communicate with each other in both unstructured, organic, free-flowy kind of situations. Those can be in discussions that we create, like, for example, the Q&As, or maybe some folks like to have a coffee klatch discussion where it's just, and those are unstructured, meaning the teacher doesn't say, okay, just talk politics. I don't give them any I just say, this is your space. Do what you want. Pronto falls into that category of student to student interaction that's free flowy, that is organic, that's not structured by the teacher, and that doesn't have points. So there's no grade book. There can be a grade book for the Canvas version of it, but normally there are no points associated with that. Sometimes we might give extra credit points, for students who are really in there engaging, but there are no points there. In Pronto, there are no points, period. So if you wanted to use Pronto, which is a great tool for that organic sort of student to student, and you want to give them sort of recognition for those points, then what you would do is create placeholder assignments within Canvas that was called Pronto Interaction or something like that. That's very clear. Students don't submit anything, but the teacher then it's added work, right? That's okay. We do work all over the place. But what it would mean is that you would have to keep track somehow of what's going on in Pronto and then reflect that in Canvas in this sort of assignment placeholder for those points, if you're going to do that. Then the last bit of interaction is student to student interaction that is structured, meaning the teacher gives prompts, gives guidance, is definitely giving feedback, absolutely giving feedback on everything. It is point-based. There's a rubric that's telling students exactly what they're supposed to do, post their initial thoughts or replies to the discussion prompt. That's why it's a reply to the prompt, right? And then the peer replies. The peer replies is up to each instructor. For me, I only have one peer reply required. A lot of folks love the two peer, reply. A lot of folks also say it has to be to somebody who hasn't had a reply yet. And I think that sometimes prompts students to say, oh no, I really love replying to Susan. I better get in there quick before somebody else replies to Susan and I'm not able to, say, hey, as I, comment on their post. So that is completely up to you, as long as there's points associated rubrics and it's structured, and so then that's the fourth way that students interact with each other. So Christine, I don't know if that sort of answered your question in terms of Pronto.
Yeah, it does, and that is really helpful. I can see, where or in what situations to use each tool. So that is very helpful. Thank you so much.
All right, awesome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share screen with you all here. And one of the things that I've decided to do is also to leave the recording for session that we had on groups for the, when was it? I think it was for fall last year. I think, or in the spring, because there were a lot of questions there that we might not come up with here right now. And that way you can view that recording. It's an older recording, but I'm going to leave that there. Normally we wipe those out and put in the newest, right? But I think that old one still helps a lot. When you come to our shell here, it's the DEPD. There are a couple of things that we're still revamping. So we're going to have here a new DE help desk, but for now, Brandon does put up his office hours. I believe he does that through the Canvas calendar. And so you'll get something that says, based on how you have your notifications, help with Brandon. I think mine normally say Canvas help with Monica. I normally have them Friday mornings. But because there's so much going on, I had them at the top of the semester. And I think from now on, I probably will just get folks, send the Canvas inbox message to me directly, and then just give me 3 days and times that are good for you. And I'll try to find where within my week we can match up and meet up. And I mentioned earlier to Connie, I am happy to meet during the weekends, even if it's touch base for 15 minutes on something. Anything you're developing and you're like, I think I need to brainstorm this out, or please do definitely drop me a line and I'm happy to meet with you. And so we're going to update these as well, so that you can see what's coming up in October. So you'll get a nice little poster board here for that. If you come in here and you're like, oh, well, I don't see the workshop I thought I was going to sign up for, then all you have to do is move your cursor to the left-hand side. And this right here with the blue links is the course navigation menu. We keep a couple of things handy for you. We keep the modules list here. We also have right here the Zoom link to DEPD. And so what will happen is, if you can actually get into this shell and there's a workshop, all you have to do is click on this Zoom link to DEPD and that will get you in. So because we had this little issue, but the thing is, if it's the first workshop you're coming to and you haven't heard that we have this link, then you're just as stuck as anybody else. It doesn't help it unless you know that it's there. And so you probably know if you already have access to this. If you don't already have access to this DEPD, and it will look like a shell, like a course shell on your dashboard, then please in the chat let Randy know, and we'll collect your names and we'll go ahead and give you the enroll code for that, so that you can have access to this. Right, I'm going to go ahead and now that we're done with a little bit of housekeeping, go into the modules. And I mentioned that when you come into the modules, the very first one is normally the first one for the day. So for example, you can see here that this this module has all of the information. It's published to what we're going to do right now. And then we have Brandon's that's coming up. He's probably working on this as we speak. And so you'll notice it's not published yet. And so because he is very, very meticulous and very specific with everything he wants to give you there. And so then mine, I haven't moved it either, but I'm going to move up that other one on tips and tricks. And so it will be placed right here after Brandon's. So I as well need to go back and do a little bit work on that. So we're going to start with the overview for this Canvas groups and peer review for student interaction. Here I've placed our objectives, the CVC OEI rubric. The rubric is really handy because it can show us what a very efficient online learning course design should look like in terms of the elements that we should have there. And so I placed that there so that you can see that. And also let you know that this covers 2 rubric items. And so it covers B2, which is a regular effective contact. And it also covers B5, which is regular effective contact among students. And so if my little talk at the beginning was covering kind of an overview of the 4 different ways there's communication, right, within Canvas and contact. And so this covers those last 2 bits that I was talking about. So again, we're going to try to configure our people tab in our course navigation to set groups and also to set up discussions for group discussion, set up assignments for group discussion, talk a little bit about what the group's mini Canvas is, and also how to set up your assignments for peer review. So the peer review is different than the discussion. It can get confusing because discussions can have a peer review, which I think is redundant. I don't often think that if you're in a discussion that you also have to have a peer review on top of that. But, I think it might work for some folks. And then also participate, if we can have time here, with some of the challenges maybe you all have faced in terms of setting up either discussions that are for groups or getting students to participate in discussions, or maybe setting up that elusive peer-reviewed assignment. And so all of this is with an effort to provide well-designed, equitable, and accessible courses for our students. Here I have a little clip, sort of cheesiness there, but you can go ahead and view that. It kind of just gives you a little overview. And then a couple of quotes here as to why we need to have this. I mean, I think we know intuitively, but when we're so busy trying to design things, it can be a challenge. Welcome, John. It can be a challenge to try to remember all of these elements. And I do, big old nerd. So I have the checklist, the CVCOEI rubric, a checklist. And whenever I'm designing a new course or I'm redesigning something, then I go through that checklist and say, okay, did I provide places for structured interaction between my students? So here's the legalese, here's the regulation, and the background and sort of a refresh and how it was called it's now called regular substantive interaction. You might see RSI, when we speak quickly, but it was also regular and effective contact was what it was called before. And so this is a bit of information on that. Regular and substantive interaction is used in the distance education definition as a consumer protection mechanism for students and to delineate federally financial aid eligibility for courses and competencies. And so this is just a reminder, we're all doing things for our students, but there are things that folks out there have already studied and know that help students, and we want to help our students. So here there's some information in terms of the definition of distance education. And so right now, distance education is very broad. It involves courses that are fully online, that are asynchronous, meaning there isn't ever a scheduled time when students meet together or meet with faculty. That doesn't mean that there aren't any virtual office hours or community hours or pronto or anything like that. It just means that all of the content is within Canvas, and that includes the interaction. But there are also hybrid courses, and those hybrid courses normally mean that it's fully online with some sort of LMS like Canvas. And then the students are asked to come physically to a classroom. That could be just for orientation and for the final. It could be once a week. It could be just a touch base 15 minutes. I don't know why we would drag students to campus for 15-minute meeting personally, but there might be some reason to do that. And so that's what that normally means. They're also fully online with synchronous meetings, which means that everything's online, but there are required meetings so that the students come and meet with faculty and the rest of the group. And if those are going to happen, they cannot be spontaneous. Those required meetings need to be then in the schedule of classes. So that's something that we need to talk to our chair about. If we're going to have fully online with synchronous meetings, then we need to talk to them about that so that can get again on the schedule of classes. Then we have high flex, always trying to help students, right? And to be able to provide what they call UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning. And what that means is that we're trying to meet students where they learn best. And so sometimes students cannot come on campus. Sometimes their technology doesn't allow them to participate in a Zoom meeting. And high flex can have a different face to it, right? But for the most part, it means that students have the option of either going into the classroom where the faculty, where the instructor is, while at the same time, that meeting is being transmitted right now, it would be through Zoom, to folks at home who want to participate in that same class meeting. So it's live in the classroom for some students who prefer that, live for the folks at home who are viewing through Zoom, and then the faculty is managing. It's a little performance act there, because then you're managing the live group there, but you're making sure no one who's Zooming in feels like they're just looking through a window and being an observer. They need to also feel like they're a participant. And so it's a lot of work. And I think the union still hasn't caught up with, what teachers want to do to be able to help their students and what students seem to want to need as well. So those are sort of a quick run through of those different distance educations. And then here's a lot more information on that can help. And so here are the 5 factors. I'm focusing on regular and substantive interaction, that it's appropriate form of media used. We're using Zoom, for example, we're using Canvas, that instructors meet accreditation requirements, that at least 2 to 5 substantive activities are used. And these here are per Contra Costa College, right? So each college defines then for the college, okay, what do we mean by this, right? It could be just a plethora of things, right? And every instructor is going to find a different way. So we're not being strict in saying you must have, these discussions. You must have an icebreaker. No, there's some things that are best practices, but really each instructor knows what works for their students. And so you have a lot of leeway in that. So at least 2 to 5 substantive activities are used, and those could be substantive discussions, meaning structured with points and a rubric. They could also be peer reviewed assignments, or they can be participation in groups. So students can be placed in groups for assignments. Most of the time that works better. And we'll talk about the different sort of groups in terms of what the needs are for our students, and also depending on when we are in the semester. If we're in week 2, if we're already in week 8, like what are the needs for the students? And also because our class roster changes, right, a lot. And so that also comes into play. That there are scheduled and predictable interaction opportunities. So these can be sort of on the fly. Oh, I think I'll put in a discussion this week. They have to be something rhythmic, something that the students already know once they're in their class, that there's a rhythm of when they're going to participate in sort of these interactions. For discussions, these are easy. My example is that I have what I call end of week discussions. And so at the end of every week, Thursdays, students are asked to come in to do some self-assessment and reflection, to talk about what they thought was the most fun or interesting topic within what we did that in that unit, and then to share any challenges with their peers and to help each other out. Like, do you have any tips? How did you get through that challenge? And so that's what mine look like. But everybody's look very different. Some folks use Padlets, and so that's really nice. Other folks use some form of Google Doc or Google Slides or something where students add their slide. And so there's all sort of ways that this can look. For the purpose of today, we're mostly looking at the Canvas tools and how we use the tools that are already there. We don't have to go and find integrations or anything like that to use those to make all of this work for our students. And then instructor responsiveness to student requests. So that means that we're alert, we're ready. What do students need? What do they want? And when do they need it? And also practicing that universal design for learning. And so here there's more blurbage on that, the definition of instructor. And so this is a nice hefty scroll definition of substantive, because it's such a squishy, right? Squishy term. What does substantive mean? Direct instruction. And then also sort of Q&As. Would video lecture be considered direct instruction? Synchronous, asynchronous. And so also about auto-graded assessments. Are those really, assessments where the teacher is there, giving individualized feedback? And so we have all of this as of July 1st. So these are pretty new terms. I think that they don't really call them policies yet, although they feel like that. And so here we have Catherine, who has given us some of that information. So I'm going to pause right now before we get into sort of the very brief pause into the nitty-gritty of the people tool and all of that. And I'm going to stop share so I can take a look at you and see if you have any questions that maybe I can help answer right now about what I just said. That was a lot. That's a lot of information. No, okay, I'm just gonna, if I don't see like movement, I'm just gonna go back into my share. So here we have in a breakdown of how to use the people tool. I have a video tutorial here on people and groups. I think it's very brief, 7 minutes. And so it's worth looking in at that, and just because you can pause me, and sometimes I slur my words. I promise I'm not drunk. And so it's nice to be able to pause, rewind, and what did she say again? And then also you can read the captions for that. And then also I've given you just-in-time resources that you can share with your students when you create something and the students need to know how to go into people. Then that's one way to do it. And then these are sort of faculty facing, what we do, what are collaborations, and a collaboration video tutorial. The other thing, as we're talking about people, is that sometimes we decide to hide people. You'll notice in this practice shell, I should say, training shell, the DEPD, that people is hidden just because we have like what, 400, 500 people in here. And so, sometimes it is to protect their privacy. These folks are throughout the district. So all of our workshops and this training course is open to the district. And so that's part of it. But for our real classes and our students, we do recommend opening up people so that students can then have the ability to reach out to their classmates. When do we never do that? I don't know, those words never and always, right? I can pretty much say with certainty that we never allow people to show if we happen to have a cross-listed class. Cross-listed means that these are two classes that would in normal times meet in two different classrooms at two different days and times. And that means that those two sets of groups of people would never see each other, not because of us, not on a normal basis. So, and I don't even think Contra Costa or the district allows cross-listed classes anymore, but they used to. And so that meant that if I had 3 sections of Poli-Sci 125, I could have all 3 of my sections in one course shell. It was a beauty, because then what I could do was, all I had to do is design one course. And if I had updates, I would only have to go to one place for announcements, one place for updating of assignments and everything. But I had to then for sure keep these people separate because of FERPA. They can't know who's in the other section, right? For all sorts of crazy reasons that I cannot even imagine. And so that was the never situation. But I think that there were a lot of folks who didn't really understand how to keep people hidden or how to create discussions where the sections were by themselves, not intermingled. And so the district just said, you know what, we can't do it because we can't possibly train everybody and then monitor to make sure they're not doing that. And so it was just going to open up for lawsuits if we did that. So, oh well, I still wish that they would let us have a little quiz or test, come in, examination, just to test if we really know how to use people and how do we use the cross-listed classes in the sections and then say, okay, you can do that. But imagine the amount of funding it would take to do that, train people and then test people. And then, so that we can't do that. That's the short of it. So here I have a class that I've intentionally not put into groups so that I could show you how to do that. The first step to do this is to click on the people tab, and that is going to be on the left column right here, what we call the course navigation menu. So we click on people. At first, it just looks like this. It's just going to be the list of everybody in the class. So that's normal. And this class hasn't begun yet. And so the only person doing any work in there is Monica Landeros. God, 300 hours. Yeesh. I'm getting tired just looking at that. And then the next part is this that is called project groups. Almost all of our Canvas shells already have this project groups listed as an automatic. So it comes as you already have people, it comes with it. But I've been in colleges where their Canvas group doesn't have this feature. And so what happens is that when I'm in those colleges, I have to go and click on add group set, and then I can title it project groups, or I can title it anything I want. So in this case, I already automatically had that, yay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my cursor to the right-hand side, past the plus or import button, which I haven't had to use, but I could see how that would be good. Say if we have people from the community coming into our courses, then maybe we could just import them all. So that might be handy. But I'll click here on the plus group or add group. It turns black whenever I move my cursor over it. And I don't know if that's just a setting that I set so I can see things better. And I'm going to just title these small group 1, right? Here I have the option of limiting how many people I want in this group, because this is going to be for my first couple of discussions, maybe around week 4, that I'm not going to put in a number because those numbers will change. So I'm just going to go ahead and save that. And then I have it here. I'm going to go ahead and add another one. So I'm going to go here and say small group 2. And yes, these are very boring titles for the groups. I tried once to name them Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, Coretta Scott King. And then what happened was that my students are like, I don't understand. I'm in Coretta Scott King discussion group. What am I supposed to do? I'm like, oh Lord. I'm like, let me just be simple. I don't know why I try to get fancy. So small group 3. And then normally 4 is a nice one. I think this class is full. So small group 2. Now, do they have to be just this? No. So later on, I might decide that although I want these groups to be of maybe 10 folks each, I might come to a point where I want a group set that just pairs up students one-on-one. And so then that I would set a new group, new title, and it might be called smaller groups, smaller project groups or team, one-on-one teams or something. And then I would just click on this group set. I would click that, and then I would create new groups that have a different number standing. Now here, because I don't know any of these students here, I'm just going to click on the little 3 dots option that's next to the add group button. And that gives me the option to message all unassigned students if I had to do that. If I had to say something like, I'm giving you agency to sign up for a group. Please do that by Thursday. Well, this would give me a chance to do that. I don't normally do that. I don't think I've ever used that actually. But what I will do is I'm going to randomly assign groups. And so I'm going to say, yes, it's okay. See, look here, require group members to be in the same section. And that was because of that other thing that now is not relevant because we're not doing that yet. But that's where that is, that to help you keep your sections completely. I'll have to say that whenever I had cross-listed classes, I was so paranoid that I just moved them over one by one so that I could make sure that I was setting eyes to the different students. And so now notice that it was a snap of a fingers. Now I have all three of, did I name two? Oh my goodness. So here you see my boo-boo. I named small group 2, small group 2. Let me go in there and edit. Eesh. Name this 4. Let me see here. Do I have, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's an easy fix. But they all each have 10 students in them. And if I later on in the semester, if I notice certain things, like for instance, there's a lot of Zane and Orlando are kind of like not getting along in there, and maybe they're becoming disruptive for the rest of the group, then I might pull one of them out and swap them in. And so that's super easy to do. All I would do is pick someone else here, move them in there, and then bring that other person down. And then I can fix the groups, And, oh, you have a question? You have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. If, let's say you don't have an even number, like you wanted 10 in a group and you had 25 students or 27 students, does the system automatically make 2 of 20 and then 1 of 7?
Yes, it will.
That's okay.
It will automatically adjust. It just knows that there's one that's going to be less than the others, and then that's fine. And then most of the time we can readjust that, later on as students drop or as we add more students. So speaking of adding more students, the best thing to do is to create these groups as soon as you have sort of your core group. And this is pre-course, so it's before your course is even open. I have about 8 people on my wait list for this class. So that means that once I'm able to get them in to the course, they will be listed here as unassigned students. It is so ultra important, so much that I even put in my calendar an alarm to let me know that once we reach week 5, and week 5, week 5, week 6, is important because by then I have kind of my core group, and by then I start to ask students to just participate in their small group, because the good students in quotes will go ahead and read everyone's post and then want to reply to everyone even if that's not the requirement. And so I said good instead of students like me who have OCD. And so what happens is that can be such an overwhelming experience. You can imagine that if there are 50 people in a class and this one student or 2 students are trying to read everyone's and reply to everyone. So sometimes we need to have a system set in place to protect those students with that sort of learning ability. So what we'll do is that then we say, okay, now week 5, I noticed that this student is just full on answering. It's beautiful, right? But I get the funny feeling they're doing it because they feel the need to do it, and so then what I'll do is that I'll rescue them and create a group that's smaller. So now if they want to reply to all 10 people in their group, that's good on them. They can go ahead and do it, and it's not too overwhelming. Because sometimes in discussion, they'll say my challenge was reading everyone's reply and then posting a reply to their post. And so it's like, oh, they know, and I'll tell them you only have to reply to 2, but they can't help themselves. And so sometimes that's the rescue. The other thing is that if I have a group assignment early in the semester, it means that I may have forgotten to reassign someone, especially if not at Contra Costa so much, but at other colleges, sometimes the counselors add students to our class and we don't even know they're there. into some weird thing. And you were like, who the heck is this asking me about this? And so what happens is that they can, if a student is unassigned, once a discussion begins, it means that that student is now orphaned from the discussions. That means they're posting to only themselves. Nobody can read it, and they can't reply to anybody because they can't see anybody's reply. Now, there is a fix. It's very manual. It means that I have to go in, assign them right away to a group, figure out what group they are in, and then say, okay, John, give me a couple of minutes. I'm going to go ahead and post your post to everybody else's group, and then grab all of the replies and then post them back in share them back to him. That's a lot of unnecessary work, and it can all be avoided if we don't have those group discussions until after, everyone's assigned to a group, because we don't want anybody to be out there by themselves, right? All right, so another thing that's really good about groups, and I'll show you this example, is that sometimes we team teach, so that might be in trainings, or that might be, like BEOI and the BEHI, we do trainings like that. Or sometimes there are courses that are listed specifically to have co-teachers. So I could think of ethnic studies. Maybe they want to have, someone come in for African American studies, someone come in for the unit that's on Chicano studies, someone come in for the unit that's in Asian and Pacific Islander studies, and someone come in for Native American Indigenous people studies. So that within one course, a 16-week course, they might have divvied it up somehow. And so if you have 4 different facilitators or co-instructors, then it's nice to be able to set up the teams. And you'll notice this one is named facilitator. And then I don't know, I played sports. So I kind of think of everything as being in a team. And so here, and maybe it's cute, I don't know, especially since we're academics. But so here I have the team Emma. She's going to be my co-facilitator for this OET training that we're giving that starts on Monday. And it's for STEM folks, and it's on equity. And so I only have these students here, and because students, there are colleague participants. And so what happens is that we're trying to divide them so that they're even. Right now, I've given Emma the top of the alphabet. That's the only way I can think of dividing it evenly right now. So she has 3. And then Team Monica, I also have 3, but they're at the lower part of the alphabet. So you can see here the unassigned people are the H's, because they're kind of in the middle. And so I need to wait till the other 30 participants get logged in here in people. And then once I have those other 30, then I have more or less an idea of the cohort. And then I can adjust these H's if they're going to stay up with Emma or if they're going to come down with me, depending on where the rest of the alphabet falls. So this is an excellent way to do that. And why do this? Because later on in the grade book, if I can show you the grades, and maybe this should be a tips and tricks for Canvas. But in the grade book, what helps me a lot is to be able to focus on the folks who are on Monica's team, because then I can go ahead and send them gentle reminders about assignments coming up. I can specifically tell them, hey, I'm holding drop-in office hours here or there or whatever. Now, the only reason people are not showing up here is that all those people haven't accepted the course yet, and the course is not published. So that's why they're not listed here. But one of the things that I can do is that I can filter by student group. So for example, I can click over here in the view, and then I can filter by assignment group, by modules, or by student group. So I'm going to pick student group, which I unclicked. There we go. And it comes up here at the top right-hand corner next to the gear. And then here, then I can go ahead and say, just show me all of Team Monica. And when I click on that here, then it will show me the listing of only the people who are in my team, so that I'm not harassing the poor participants into things that they're like, what? Who's Monica? Why is she telling me to do all this? So it is very nice to be able to do that. That also means that here I can see if there's zeros or that no submission of assignments. That means I can reach out to those folks by clicking on message students who, and then it'll show me who hasn't submitted within my team alone. And then that way I can reach out to those specific students. So that's another way of using people. And so we have 1 minute to go. So what I'm going to do is, let me just, with 1 minute, all I can do is wrap up. What I do want to say is, please go back to our module, our distance education, professional development shell, and my module. Go back in there, because I do have a recording of a workshop webinar where I go into peer-reviewed assignments in great detail. I go into how to create an assignment that has groups, so that students get their own mini Canvas page. And that mini Canvas for their group means that they can create their own pages, because they can edit, they can work that mini Canvas, and they can have their own discussions, their own announcements. And so it's a really nice place for them to work. And then I also go into peer-reviewed assignments and how to assign the peer reviews, and then how to remind students that they have a review to make, and how that works with the rubrics. And so apologies, like, look at that, 10 o'clock. But again, I know there was a lot that I didn't go over here. I think that that module with all of those pages will definitely help. And take a look at, I'm going to leave it there, that other recording is 59 minutes long. And so it just has a wealth of knowledge. So what we'll do right now, just because it's the end, is that we'll say goodbye and close the recording, but I'll stay on in case you have specific questions about any of this or things that I definitely didn't cover. Okay, so we're gonna stop recording.